Hi. So sometimes when I have unwanted thoughts, I begin to witness my thoughts, so observe them.
Are you saying there's enough momentum that they're bigger than a thought?
So if I'm not feeling good, so I've passed that 17-second mark, and I become aware that I'm not feeling good, I then tune into, well, what thought am I buying into at this moment in time? And then I begin to observe it. And as I do that, I detach from the thought. So then it's like an understanding that I'm no longer my thought. And my question is, when I'm doing that, so if I'm detached from it, and in that moment...
In other words, you acknowledge that you've thought a thought, and now the thought is thinking. In other words, it exists. And now you're sort of stepping back from it in a more observant manner. And what's your feeling about your relationship with the thought?
At that point, I feel my natural state of being become dominant, and I feel very compassionate.
So what's happening is you have caught it in the early subtle stages before it has so much momentum that you don't have any control, and you're exercising control and seeing through the eyes of Source. Good job.
Thank you. My question is, am I still creating if vibrationally my vibration has risen, but the thoughts are still there, and thoughts are a vibration?
Well, here's the thing. Every thought is two subjects, wanted and not wanted. So let's say you've created an unwanted thought, but in the process of it, you've utilized your guidance system so that you know that you don't want that, but that you do want that. So haven't you pointed yourself in the direction of what you want, and haven't you pointed yourself in the direction of your inner being? And isn't that the reason that you feel better? And isn't that exactly what the creative process is? Do you ever want contrast to not exist? Of course not. When you're in the midst of contrast and you haven't found your balance or your control, then that's when you wish that bad stuff didn't exist. But when you really step back and you understand the process of creation, and you know that without darkness you could not understand light, if there weren't silence you wouldn't understand sound. Everything that exists, every subject that exists, there's wanted and absence of it. And so we think you're doing a really good job. We don't want any of you to work too hard at controlling your thoughts. We think that it would serve you really well if you could begin to differentiate between thinking thought and receiving thought. And so let's talk about what you were describing, because this is really a wonderful discussion that you just presented to us. Really good, deliberate creating. So you're chewing on some thought and realizing that. Tell the story again.
I'll be chewing on some thought that I recognize as unwanted because I'm not feeling good.
All right, so it's unwanted thought that I'm chewing on briefly.
Yeah.
And in the process, then what?
I then step back from it and I just observe.
And how did you recognize it as unwanted?
Because I'm not feeling good.
Yeah, because you're sensitive to the way you feel.
Yeah.
So you caught it in early subtle stages, and then something really remarkable happened. You shifted from thinking thought to receiving thought.
Wow, okay, wow.
And do you see how that is?
Wow.
Because as you've been exploring contrast, and you've known what you don't want and known what you do want, you've been handing off over and over and over again, handing off to your inner being, handing off to your vortex, handing off, extending what you do want, 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 what you do want. And it's been gathered and tended to, and cooperative components have joined. And so this is a strong, pulsing offering of vibration. So what you do want is a very strong influence in your experience. And in the moment that you deliberately released your attachment, subtle and slight as it was, then this calling called you in a stronger way. And that's why we're saying the receiving of that thought rather than the thinking of that thought. We don't want you to get too hung up on all of this, but so many of you try too hard in this. Rather than this being a thinking process, we want it to be a feeling process where you are just willing to gravitate more to what feels better. Our friend who began with us today has not been through life, as most of you have not been also, has not been really tuned to or inclined to gravitate to what feels best, because Sometimes you're raised in an environment that shouts at you, you don't get to feel good all the time. And feeling good is not what we are born for. It is, but there are so many people who are suffering that don't particularly like it when you're not. And so they sort of condemn your selfish interest in feeling good. And in the process, they become the dominant voice or point of attraction that calls you, rather than your inner being. Now, stay with us just a bit, because we're about to have a sort of discovery here together. When we ask you, what receiving mode are you in? Are you receiving from your vortex, from your source, from all that you've been asking for, from what you've evolved to be? Are you receiving from your higher self? Are you receiving from your total self? Where are these thoughts coming from? Are they coming from this source, or are they coming from the peanut gallery? Are they coming from the spin-off of man's conscious thought? So now maybe it would be a good time to acknowledge that you're always in the receiving mode of something. You're always in the receiving mode. Once you cross that 68-second mark, you are in the receiving mode of something, because the law of attraction is calling you to what you have been receiving. Now, we can feel you feeling a little unsettled, because you want to create your own reality, don't you? And we want you to too, but we want you to accept that it's a three-part process, just not a I in and of myself, me, myself, and I create my own reality. I create my own reality. We say, yes, you do, with a lot of other people who help you discern what you prefer. That really matters. What you prefer really, really matters, because you're out here on the leading edge, taking thought beyond that which has been before. This combination of beings has never been to all of the universe, and each and every one of you is playing an important part in the conversation that is happening right here and now. There's not one observation or participation of energy in this room that is not part of the conversation that we're having. You don't have to be in the hot seat. You don't have to be speaking out loud. You're contributing vibrationally. You've brought what you've brought to the room, and all of it is a part of the mix, you see. So everyone is thinking. Everyone is contributing, because everyone is offering. But we want you to think in terms of your offering vibrationally. But at what point do you begin really creating your own reality? When you've learned to tune to the frequency of your highest source. It's like this. We'll just talk about this one, not what was in your vortex before you got here. But throughout this experience, maybe kids were mean to you on the playground, or maybe you were mean to them, or maybe you had a hard go of it when you were really little, and maybe there was strong discipline around you. Maybe there was some physical abuse. Maybe people didn't like themselves, and therefore they were not able to like you. There are all kinds of things that happened in your past. Our friend was sort of talking about things in the past and how they're affecting you. But none of them need to have anything to do with what you're offering vibrationally now. It's only what you're focused upon that is active in your vibration. So when we talk about thinking a thought, what we're really talking about is what you're focusing on. What you're focusing on really is the welcoming or the generating of a vibration. And so thought, if we really define thought in an accurate way, thought is vibration. And the more you focus in a particular direction, and the more that thought becomes activated and then gathers to itself more that is like it, the more likely you are to call that vibration a thought. And as it's moving through your mind, it feels to you like you are thinking the thought, and therefore it feels to you like you are generating the thought. Are you with us? But you're not generating the thought. You're just in harmony with the thought. You've just got a vibrational frequency that is like the thought. And if you hang around there long enough, then thoughts like it will occur to you often enough that you'll think that that's how you think. We just want to throw this one more thing in. So as we're talking to you about this progression, you, genius creators of your own reality, and we're talking about how, without even knowing it, you put all of this into the vortex, and it became more and more and more and more, and who you really are is there, inspiring you, calling you to the wholeness of who you are, and that's where satisfaction is. That's the only place that true satisfaction is. And so you're tuned in, tapped in, turned on, maybe because you meditated, maybe because you meditated. It could be because you meditated. It might be. You might have meditated, and that might be why. Meditation might have been your path to this alignment to everything that is important to you. Maybe you meditated. We're just saying. Maybe you did. Or maybe you were on a rampage of appreciation. Maybe somebody was loving you and it made you easy to align with well-being. But anyway, in this moment of time, you're tuned in, tapped in, turned on. And so now you're in a place where these vibrations that we're talking about endlessly have enough momentum, they have enough reality to them, and more important, you are tuned closely enough to them that you are translating the vibration into a thought. So if you are a translator of vibration into thought, would it not always be accurate to say you are the receiver of the thought? You are the receiver of the thought. Now, once you receive that thought, as you allow that thought to gather momentum and the thought gets bigger and bigger and you continue to receive it, now you are also the broadcaster of the thought. You're receiving it and broadcasting it and receiving it and broadcasting it, receiving it and broadcasting it and receiving it and broadcasting it. You see how it works? And now, as you are receiving it and broadcasting it, as your inner being is receiving it and broadcasting it, now others have the benefit, a greater benefit maybe, because they're up close to you, of being able to receive and broadcast too. And so we don't want you to worry too much about whether you're thinking a thought or whether you're receiving a thought, because mostly you're just thinking a thought. And the more you think a thought, then the bigger the thought gets, and the bigger the thought gets, and the more you broadcast it. And whatever it is that you're broadcasting is your point of attraction, so more is coming back to you. So we can't, and you can't either, find a beginning and an ending of all of this. So it really doesn't matter whether you're thinking it or receiving it, because nobody can tell the difference about whether you're doing it or not. But one sure thing you can feel is how you feel when that process. And so it is not different than getting in your vehicle and turning on your radio and listening to something that's not pleasing to you and just choosing a different station. And the earlier you choose, the easier it is, as you've demonstrated to us. But the more you meditate, the more you meditate, the more you meditate, 15 or 20 minutes every day, then the more that will be your dominant station. That will be your dominant point of reception. And then things like who you really are will be flooding into your experience. And others who are watching you, you can walk out in this real live world where there's a lot of things being experienced by a lot of people. And what's coming to you is so significantly and obviously good in nature, pleasing to you in nature. And others would say to you, why are you so lucky? Why is this happening to you? And you would be a little hard pressed to say, because I've accomplished this point of attraction.